So, welcome back to the next session, and in this session we are going to talk about another approach to change management, which is called contingency and process based approach. Before that, we discussed about various approaches like OD based approach, appreciative inquiry and its application in change management. We also talked about action research, and then we also looked into the sense making approach, where we try to understand and interpret things in the best possible manner to make sense of it, so that we are able to derive some meaning out of it. Right. Now, if you look at these approaches, they are divergent, they provide different perspectives, and they also deal with various facets of change management when it comes to implementing change in the organizations. Now, what we are going to discuss is something different, that is contingency approach and the process. So, when we are talking about the contingency approach and the process approach, basically it talks about two different perspectives. So, contingency means what? It depends. So, how we are going to implement change, it depends upon a number of factors, right. So, looking at the context and the environment, and then you decide what process you will adopt for bringing about a change. Now, if you look at the process based approach, it talks about the entire process through which a change that is initiated by the management is implemented, so that it gets institutionalized. Now, where we are talking about this process based approach, here we will see that what are the different kind of processes that is being adopted by the managers to bring about a successful change. Now, in this lecture we will be basically talking about these two approaches. So, we start with this. Now, if you look at the change management approaches, what actually happens? Now, most of these change could be strategic in nature, right. It means that you want to bring about a change, because you find that your strategy, which is being derived based on the environment, would help you to bring about a change in your performance, your effectiveness, right. So, you develop an action plan, and this strategy or action plan requires some kind of change to be brought out in different areas of the change, whether it is people related, whether technology related, whether system or structure related, or even related to the strategy or the culture of the organization, right. So, when you start thinking about bringing about a change, you go through a number of steps, right. So, if you look at some of the models that we are going to discuss now, most of these models basically have a number of steps, and you will also find that in some cases the number of steps are less, and in some cases the number of steps are more, right. And that is why most of these models are known as n step models. It means the number of steps that each of these models talk about will vary, right. So, the exact number of steps will vary depending upon what kind of model you are going to use, right. So, before we think about bringing a change in the organization, you have to see that how you adopt it, which model you are adopting it, what is your approach, whether you go for a more coordinated and planned approach, or whether it is unintended, not coordinated and planned. So, based on these criteria, we will look into various models and frameworks, where we have discussed about the different steps. Now, if you look at n step approach, the first model that we are going to talk about is Kotter's 8 step model. Now, Kotter has provided different steps, mostly 8 steps that he talks about, and if you look at these steps, it talks about starting with establishing the need for urgency to finally making the change as a part of the organization, right. So, it becomes a part of the culture of the organization. Now, if you look at these each step model, you can see that these steps are sequential, right. First you go by step 1, then move to the next stage, then the third stage, then the fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh, and finally, you close it. When change is institutionalized or it is established in the organization. Now, if you look at this model, the first stage is what? It talks about the need for agency. It means that you think or decide that yes, there is a need to go for a change, right. The moment you think that yes, you also need to ensure that yes, there is a group which is going to back up this kind of change. It means that the moment you decide about the change, there are people who are going to advocate it and support it. Then you develop a vision that what will happen after this change, right. How this vision is going to be influenced by the change that you want to bring. And then this the vision that you want to realize need to be communicated to the stakeholders. And then the next stage where the people come into the picture, you need to empower them. It means that you need to provide them authority or delegate authority, you can say, down the line, so that they participate in the process. This empowerment bring two things, that is commitment and engagement on behalf of the staff, and it also reduces your resistance, right. And then you see that on your way or when you are implementing, gradually you are also succeeding. So, in the process, if you have achieved short term wins, right, you suppose your goal is divided into sub goals. So, suppose sub goal 1 is achieved by you. So, you celebrate it, right. It means that the moment you ensure that yes, you have succeeded at stage 1 or the step first of your change that you want to bring out, then you move to the next stage, right, because it is a consequential step, one by one you move to the change, right, and then keep on consolidating whatever change you have been able to stabilize, right. And once all the changes have been, all the step all the entire process, you can say, of the change has been part of the organization, then this is what you know as embedding the change. It means now the change has been institutionalized and it has become a part of the culture. Now, let us take an example to explain this, right. So, we will take an example related to say restructuring or a re-engineering. Now, you think that some of the processes that you follow or some of the business processes are not effective and relating to the performance, right. Suppose you know that your supply chain system or say recruitment process, for example, is not validated enough, it is not working effectively, a return on investment for the entire recruitment process is very low, and you are not able to find a right fit between the person and the job. What does it suggest? So, all these activities actually talks about the urgency, that yes, there is a need to change or bring about sufficient changes in the recruitment process, or you want to go for a new process, entirely new process, which is going to be say more cost effective and would also bring better people or talented people in the organization. Now, the moment you move this idea or the HR moves this idea, there should be a group which is going to advocate this or which is going to support it and also guide this change, maybe from the change managers, from the HR side, or even the line managers could also act as a support group for this, because they think that the kind of people that they are getting to work are not good enough, right. Then you develop a vision for the HR, that is the basic objective is to bring very talented people in the organization to have a better fit between the person and the job. And then this vision related to this process need to be communicated down the line. Then the HR managers need to be empowered to decide about the kind of recruitment process that they want to adopt, right. And here they need to be delegated authority, they need to decide how they are going to recruit, what processes they are going to have, how many steps are going to be in the recruitment process, starting with looking for the applications advertisement to applications to sort listing, screening and the final recommendations. So, that they carry out this process effectively, and then you see that the first stage, say for example, if you adopt a new process and you have decided to go for a new advertisement in a different kind of mode and see whether you get more applications. So, the moment you say that you have got more application, it means that it is a kind of short term means. It means that there are more people who are prospective employees have applied for the job, right. Now, you can have a better selection decision, right. And at each stage of this process, you are going to say that what are the wins that you have made, and then all the gains can be consolidated and see whether your entire recruitment process have been cost effective in terms of outcomes, that these are the gains, right. First, how many people you have been able to get, right, what was your investments, and what is the level of talent, whether there is a better fit between person and the job or not. And once this recruitment process gets institutionalized, then it becomes a part of the organization. So, next time you are going to make use of the same kind of recruitment process, right. So, bringing about a change in the recruitment process, what happens? You go through all the stages to ensure that this change is being implemented in the organization. So, this is the most effective model that have been used by the researchers as well as practitioners both to ensure that the change is carried out successfully. Now, in addition to that, we will also discuss some other models, where you will find that number of stages or the steps may be less or more, right. For example, if you look at some other models like 10 commandments model, 10 keys, 12 action steps, transformation trajectory, 9 phase change process model, step by step change process model, 12 step frameworks, right. So, these are the different models that have been proposed, and all of them have different steps. We will not discuss all of them, we will discuss some of them which are more important and relevant to understand that how the change is being carried out. So, moving further, we will talk about the 10 commandments, right. Now, if you look at this 10 commandments, it have been given by Cantor and Zick, right. Now, if you look at this 10 commandments, they also talk about 10 different steps which they call 10 commandments. So, these 10 commandments include, to start with, you need to analyze the organization and its need for change, which is very closer to what Kotter has said. Then you create a vision and common direction, right. Third, separate it from the past. So, do not link it with the kind of changes that you have introduced and whether it has succeeded or not, right. So, each new change that you want to bring, you think about it afresh. Then you create a sense of urgency, have a strong support, strong leadership. It means that you need a powerful change managers, a group of people who are going to support it, right. Then the sixth stage is political sponsorship. They see that there is no political maneuvering, right. No conflict is there. You are not going to go for any kind of negotiation to bring about any change which you want to introduce, right. And then you decide about an implementation plan, that how do you go about it. So, look into the process of the change, and then you develop a structure. So, you also need to bring about a change in the structure which is going to support the implementation process. Then the ninth stage relates to what? Communication. Communication to the stakeholders or the employees. You need to engage them and you be honest with them, because you need to communicate what kind of change you want to bring, why you want to bring, what kind of benefits it would bring, right. So, if you communicate and involve people, then this would lead to better engagement and commitment from their side, and they would also trust you, right. And then finally, the last stage is reinforce and institutionalize the change, where the change become a part of the organization. Now, we have discussed two major models, that is 10 commandments and the Kotter's step, 8 step model, right. Now, we move further to talk about the 10 keys of successful change management. Now, if you look at these 10 keys, they are also talking about more or less similar things. For example, here the first stage he talks about is defining the vision. Defining a vision means that you need to define about the overall objective of the change and how it is going to be implemented. Say for example, you want to bring about technological changes, right. So, you say that what kind of technology you want to bring, what is the objective of bringing this technology and how this technology is going to be successfully implemented, right, because you want to go for a change in your technology of production. Then mobilizing, right. So, you need to create dynamics for change among the employees, so that people are less resistance, they go for it, right. Then catalyzing, look at the structure and how it will work and support or facilitate. So, here you look at the structure of the, that is reporting relationship of the people. Then steering, you need a set of people who is going to take it up, and that is why you have a steering committee, a change group or change managers. Then delivering the changes. Now, you are going to implement the change by realizing the vision in terms of day to day operations, right. Whether you are going to make bring about any change because you want to go for a change in the technology, does it require any change in the structure, people, the processes, because the moment you think about bring about a change in the technology, this might necessitate a change in the structure of the organization or even a change in what you call the processes, because the processes associated with earlier technology would be different compared to the new technology, and accordingly you need to bring about certain changes, so that it gets aligned. Then you also get participation, make sure that everybody participates in the process. Then you also handle the emotional dimensions, questions like anxiety, stress, which might people might have related to these kind of changes, that what will happen to them, how it is going to impact them. So, these issues need to be discussed, and finally, discuss the power dynamics, because any kind of restructuring exercise bring about a change in the power status and position of the people. And then you need to train people, for example, going for a technical change requires training in technology and also interpersonal skills. So, that in new setup people are able to relate and interact better with each other and then communicate effectively, right. Now, what I am talking about is that if you look at these steps, more or less all these models talk about civilized steps, but which step would come where there is a variation in these models, right. Similarly, if you look at the Nadler's approach, he talks about 12 steps, like getting the support of the powerful people, getting leaders, model change behavior, then using symbols and language, so looking at the culture of the organization. Then what are the areas which are stable, which does not need to be touched upon. Then what is the level of dissatisfaction with the current scenario of the people, are you want to participate people in the process. So, if you want to looking for if you looking forward to people's participation, then you go for it. Reward behavior that supports change, especially those. So, try to link this change behavior with the reward and disengage from the old. It means that do not look into the past, communicate image of the future, that what kind of future you have been thinking about. So, if you have built a scenario of the future, you communicate this, that with this kind of change we are going to build up this kind of future. Then use leverage, various leverage points at different levels, that is very important, maybe the top management, then middle management, even at the department level, right. And then transition management arrangements. Suppose you want to bring about the change in the technology, then how are you going to manage the production, right. So, the transition management arrangement is very, very important. So, that you move very quickly, very smoothly from one technology to another technology, otherwise there could be a gap in the production and performance, and get feedback of the people to ensure that how well you have been able to implement change, whether it is successful or not, right, or the extent to which it is successful. Now, after Nadler's model, what we are going to discuss next is a trajectory basically, which talks about transformation. So, these kind of transformations are required to bring about a change, that is transformation of the leadership. It must lead to some kind of innovation and you are able to resolve the conflict, because the moment you think about any kind of change, right, it brings conflict, it may have certain consequences, right. So, you need to look into those consequences like reduced innovation because of conflict, tendency towards groupthink because people start thinking in similar way, which may not be good for the organization, right. So, he talks about these things where he said that your capacity to thrive depends upon these transitions when you want to go for a change. So, he talks about awakening, realizing that there is a need for change, conceiving for the future, what kind of future you are looking for, what kind of change environment you are looking at, what kind of change organizations you want to have. Then you build up your change agenda and then implement the change, and finally, mastering the change. Now, if you look at these trajectories, you will find that how you are going to devise and execute change along the transition. Since we are talking about transition management, that is very, very important to you need to ensure that starting with the realization of the change to basically completing the entire change process over a period of time, it all depends upon your capacity to innovate, right. So, what is important here is your leadership, right, the ability to resolve your conflict and how innovative you are in your attitude and behavior, right. So, if it is there, then with time you will be able to go through all these stages to understand and execute in a more smooth manner. Now, if you look at this Traffinder's trajectory, we move further to discuss about another model which is given by Anderson and Anderson. It is known as 9 phase change model. Now, these are the 9 phases. Sorry. Now, if you look at these 9 phases, it also talks about similar things, right. What is the first stage? Prepare to lead the change, then create a vision, commitment and capacity for the change. Then it leads to assessing the current situation and the design requirements, what kind of structure you are looking forward to. Then look at what is your desired state, you create a situation or create a design of the future state, which is the end desired state. Look at the impact part, what will happen if you go for it, then go for it, implement the change, and once you implement the change, you see what happens. It means that whether you have been able to create a new stage or not, and finally, you get the feedback, learn and course correction, and then you move further, right. So, the wake up call is from here and then you move and implement the change. So, you go through this process which could be more cyclical in nature, right, and this process may continue when you go for incremental changes, because you bring about one change, then you try to think about another and then go for another change. So, you follow the cycle, right. So, it basically talks about what? The processes from moving organization from where you are to where you should be, right, and it also provide guidance, so that you are able to achieve your intended business outcomes. Ultimately, any kind of change effort or change is supposed to bring about a change in certain outcomes, in performance, in effectiveness, in commitment, in satisfaction. So, whatever it is, if it is not there, it means that you have not been able to bring successful change. The change has been there, it has not resulted in certain desirable outcomes for the organization. So, it is very, very important for you to understand that whether you have been able to achieve intended business outcomes along with this change that you want to implement successfully or not, right. So, this is the 9 phase change model. Then there is another model which is proposed by Kirkpatrick, and he says that these are the stages: shaping the requirements and aspiration for a change, having a strategy which is not very clear, see what kind of feedbacks you can get, then look at the result, have a schedule, go for change and execute it. Now, if you look at this, most of these models that we have been talking about, starting with the quarter stage, you will find lot of differences, variations in the approach, the way they look at the model, right. So, based on this understanding, these are some of the issues that which has come out of these various models that we have been talking about. The first is the sequence of steps. Now, when we are talking about the sequence of steps, what does it mean? It means the number of steps and the timing of steps and the sequence of steps, all three vary, right. Some models talk about 9 steps, some 10, some 12, some 7, right. Even the sequencing of the steps are different, right. Say need for change, in some models it has come at the first stage, somewhere it has come at the third stage, right. And the timing is also varying, because the stage has changed. Even resourcing for each step has also changed. So, the kind of resources that you require at each stage, people have been talking about differently. And the level of engagement of various stakeholders, whether it is change management, top leaders, right, employees, it varies. And whether you are going to manage one step at a time, or whether you are going to manage multiple steps at a time, that is also a question. Right. Then some of the model talks about revisiting steps, some of them do not talk about it, right. But the major question here is that whether we require all the steps for bringing about a change or not, right. So, these are some of the issues which is related to n step model. Now, moving further, we will talk about the contingency approach. So, what we have been talking about the this contingency approaches that we have discussed, which what they suggest, there is no one best way to manage or implement change successfully. If you look at these models, most of these models talk about different stages, right, different frameworks and models having the number of steps which are different, the sequence of these steps are different, right. And another important thing is that what kind of change you want to bring, and how you go about bringing about a successful change and implementing change in the organization, it depends upon two important factors: the commitment and engagement of the people, and whether you are going for a radical or incremental change. So, the scale of change and receptivity to change by the members of the organization is very important. So, what you need to understand is you need to select a model depending upon what kind of change you want to bring, incremental or transformational. And another important factor that you need to understand, that how you are going to manage resistance of the employees. In the last module we have talked about that yes, you need to manage resistance, and there are certain steps that can be taken. So, there is a better reception to the change by the members of the organization, right. In some of the models you will find that sometimes you want to be collaborative, you expect collaboration, but some of the models like OD approaches talks about what? Coercion also, right, because sometimes people are not ready to accept, but you want to go for it. So, you use threat as a medium to influence people, so that they go for a change, right. So, if you look at these contingency approaches, there are different perspectives, that is very important, because there is no best way, it depends, right, what kind of change you want to bring and the extent to which people have been able to accept it, right. So, contingency approaches are not very common, less common, and why it is not very common? Because you want to follow a preconceived stages model, and think that if you are going to use these models and framework, it would be helping you to succeed, right. Because the perceptions of the context of the situation may be different, right. And contingency approaches require greater analysis by the managers and prescriptive of the change management. So, it is not going to fit into any of these models that we have been talking about, right. It also requires better leadership style than just having a set of actions that you need to go one by one in a sequence to achieve success, right. Next, if you look at the various change management styles, it also raises questions, right, especially the credibility of the senior management. For one time you go for another style, another time you go for a different kind of style. And then the most important is the question that we are going to ask is what is contingent. So, it depends upon the context or the situation, because that is going to define how we are going to manage change, right. So, the contingency approaches are also important, but they require more effort on the part of the management. So, if you look at the process based approach, it says that it is a continuous process, right, which unfolds differently depending upon the time and the context. That is what we have been talking about. So, if you look at the outcome of the change, it occurs through a complex interplay of groups, politics, goals, objectives. So, there could be the various factors which contribute to the success of change, right. So, any approach of the change manager basically depends upon the level of comfort that he has, how much confrontation he is going to have, right. So, there could be a number of factors which are going to affect the change outcome, right. So, if you think that is a continuous process, right, you go for detailed analysis, understand the change in a retrospective way, look at the past and then learn from the past, look at the mistakes that you have made and what is your learning and experiences, and based on that if you proceed and inculcate that in the present process, probably you will be more successful. Moving further, what is being diagnosed and that we have already discussed, but here what I am going to talk about. See, these are the various areas of change that we have been talking about, right, is not it? That is where you want to bring about a change. So, if you are able to decide it, it is always good to go for it. It means that you will be in a better position to implement that. So, the first thing is that yes, you must be able to identify what is you want to bring. So, if whether you want to bring about a change in the HR processes, whether you want to bring about a change in the technology or the structure or the HR or the strategic changes, right. Next issue is very, very important. Once you have been able to diagnose, you also need to identify at what level you want to bring about it, whether the target of the change is individual, groups, intergroup, organization or transorganization. The moment you are able to define both the diagnosed issue at the level, then your job becomes easy, right. The third level. So, what kind of intervention you want, whether you want to go for shallow intervention or depth intervention. So, that is why this is a 3-dimensional model. The first dimension talks about the issue, second about the level and third about the depth. So, if all the 3 things are clearly identified, then you will be in a better position to understand which model to use to implement change. For example, suppose you have decided that the issue is related to the structure, it is related to the intergroup and then you go for a deep structure. So, now it makes it very clear for you that okay, these are the things that we need to do, and accordingly you can define what are the steps that you need to follow, right, and that makes your job much more simple. And that is why if you look at these 3-dimensional model, it is always good, right. That is what I have been talking about. And then you look at the culture, need for input from employees or the stakeholders, how much time you have, right, whether you can look at the evidence for effectiveness or not, and the competence of the change managers. So, all these are important and that makes your job simple to implement a change successful in any organizations, right. Thank you very much.